All right. Welcome back to another episode of Two Plain Sports. Today, we're going to talk about some transfer portal news, review, look back at the full 2022 signing day, kind of thoughts on Oklahoma's results, other schools' results, because it was quite a doozy for some of those schools down south. But before we get into it, thank you all for just the immense support over the last month or so. This channel has grown ridiculously fast. I mentioned it last time, but starting December, we were maybe at like 600 subscribers, I think. And now, not even maybe a little bit over halfway through December, we're almost at 2,500. So it's all thank you to you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that little bell so that you know every time that we post a video, you're notified. And again, make sure you throw down a comment on the bottom. Let us know what you thought about the 2022 class, not just for Oklahoma, but for other schools. It was kind of a big day for a lot of people, a lot of kids. So let's get into it. Transfer portal news. We mentioned it in a video before, but big one for Oklahoma. Theo Wease has officially removed his name from the transfer portal, and I think that means a lot of big things, not just him coming back and giving us another huge receiver in addition to Jaden Gibson. But Theo Wease is also about 6'5", big dude, long arms, and it could mean that Caleb Williams is not leaving anytime soon. Brandon, do you want to kick us off and let us know what you think here?
Yeah, no, first and foremost, you got to talk. I think the three of us on this show, at least, we all believe that Theo Wease is a very good football player, very talented football player, 5-star at Allen, Texas. He hasn't really had like the career that we, maybe would have expected out of him to this point, or, just that, whatever. He's kind of battled injuries throughout his OU career, things of that nature. But a very, very talented guy. And first and foremost, it is very good to see him withdraw his name from the transfer portal because it's great to keep a guy with that kind of talent on the roster. And then going back to your other point, which I think we talked about this before the show started, the most important thing to me, it sounds like he knows something about Caleb Williams, because I feel like you don't withdraw your name from the portal if you don't know, if you're not comfortable with a quarterback that is going to be playing, with you. So either he must be a big Nick Evers guy, or, whoever might start next year, or he knows something about Caleb Williams. And I like to think he knows something about Caleb Williams because that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah. And another thing that he has to be thinking about, I agree with you, Brandon. I do think that this is maybe hinting that Caleb Williams might be coming back. But I mean, if he's got to look at Jeff Lebby's offense down in, with Ole Miss and UCF. They put up points and they threw a ton of yards. So even if it wasn't Williams and they had to go get someone, he has to know that he's going to have his chance, or, to rack up some yards and some stats this next fall. Just something crazy to think about. At one point in that 2019 class, Hazelwood was the number one wide receiver. Bridges was number 11. Wease was number 3. Stogner was like the number 1 tight end, or number 2 or 3 or whatever it was.
And to be frank, none of them really panned out. I mean, if we're being straight up honest, none of them really panned out. They're guys we all liked a lot. Bridges, I think we all thought was really special. He's just, unfortunately for him, and Sooner fans in general, he doesn't make the greatest off-field decisions. And then you have Austin Stogner, who's another guy we really liked. He's got, the really cool story coming back from that huge injury he had. Really, really a hard guy to not pull for. He's very likable. And then Wease and Hazelwood, I mean, they all just, I think they all had so much talent, and none of them really panned out. So it is good to see Wease come back, and maybe this is the year that we finally see the 5-star that he is.
Yeah. I mean, and I think Wease is probably the best one so far out of all of them. As far as, I'm not talking about, Spencer Rattler, but as far as the receivers go, Bridges is not even in the equation. But looking at Stogner and Hazelwood and Wease as a receiver goes, I mean, Wease has probably been the best one outside of his injury. I don't know. Hazelwood just never, I don't know, there were such high hopes, and I don't know if they weren't getting the development that they were needing or what, the coaching. I don't know. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you have that many guys with that many stars. I know stars aren't everything, but you would think one of them would hit. But it's tough. It's tough to see, or tough to say, and it's good to at least have Weiss come back and provide some added depth that the Sooners were really needing at this point.
Yeah. So with Weiss, it seems like you guys said, big news, not just for him coming back, but Caleb Williams seems to be coming back. Something else with Caleb. Brent Venables was in an interview with Dean Blevins, and we all have our thoughts on Dean, but he did ask him, do you expect Caleb to be coming back next year? And his exact, I think, or I'm not going to quote him exactly, but paraphrasing, he said he'd be surprised if Caleb wasn't coming back. He expects Caleb to come back, and it would be, really, really something extremely impactful from Venables' perspective to get Williams to leave Oklahoma.
The only reason that didn't scare me is because that came straight from the horse's mouth, as you're talking about Brent Venables being the horse in this scenario. Because if Dean Blevins were to just tweet, sources tell me Caleb Williams is coming back to Oklahoma, I think all three of us in this show would be like, well, shit, boys, it's Nick Evers season.
Yeah, probably. Dean's got a hell of a Twitter account, that's for sure. But going back in regards to those receivers in the 19 class, I think saying that Weiss is definitely the most not talented, but has had the best college career so far might not be that big of a stretch, because if we remember, Weiss was the first one to get an opportunity in an Oklahoma offense. Hazelwood was next, and Bridges was right after that. And Bridges, like you guys said, it just doesn't make very good decisions off the field, and he's gone. And Jaden and Theo just were riddled with injury, and it's unfortunate. But if they can both stay healthy, putting your money on Weiss isn't that big of a stretch. Hazelwood did start to come on a little bit. He was really a big red zone target for Caleb last year, and I think that's what Theo can bring for Caleb next year. If he comes back, he'll be a big pretty much the red zone replacement for Hazelwood in respect to the outside and the receiver position. And then we'll still have Mario Williams and Marvin Mims to come in and play the deep ball and just do what they do. But I really would be a lot more surprised if Caleb doesn't come back at this point. If he wanted to, he should have done it already. I don't think it makes sense for him to wait till after the bowl game. And I can understand one perspective. He wants to win with his team if it's his final year here, but also we've seen so many guys, players and coaches leave before the bowl game. The bowl games at this point, unless you're in the playoffs, don't mean anything. They're just a preview to next year's team, not an exclamation point to this year's season, which I know people have differing opinions on it, but at this point we just have to roll with how it is. And the team we're going to see versus Oregon, I believe, is going to be the team that we see next year and in the spring game and the 2022 season. It's just going to be what it is. So if Caleb's planning to stick around for that, he's giving this coaching staff an opportunity, and he doesn't really have plans to leave. It again would have to be something just catastrophic to force him to out of Oklahoma at this point.
Yeah. And I think another interesting note about Theo Weiss is obviously he's missed all of this year. He played in the COVID year, so that's a free year of eligibility. He did play almost all of 2019. So the kid's only burned 1 year of eligibility. So in theory, he has 3 years left, which is kind of hard to even think about. And I'm not saying that he's going to be at Oklahoma for the next 3 years, because he might have a breakout season next year and be gone. But that's a long time. I mean, could you imagine him not leaving until 2024? That's quite the career. I mean, I assume he's getting the medical red shirt this year, and that's what I'm basing my assumption off of.
Yeah, that would be fair. Brandon, do you have any thoughts on this one before we move on to the next?
No, I agree with what you guys are saying. Yeah, you can go on to the next topic.
So the next topic, while it's not directly impacting Oklahoma football, it is kind of an interesting topic. Moving over to the Pac-12, Dylan Gabriel has announced that he is transferring to UCLA. It's going to be interesting to see. UCLA won the Battle of Los Angeles this year in their rivalry game, and it didn't seem like it was very close. USC, while everyone's got, probably really negative feelings about how Lincoln left and that he's there, it is what it is at this point. But last year, if we look at it, they weren't a very good team. And yes, he's adding on some talent, and he might add on a little bit more come February. But the team isn't going to look extremely different next year, and Dylan Gabriel may have their number if he's put in the right situation. Brum, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, with him transferring to UCLA, that just tells me that Oklahoma wasn't pursuing him. And the only reason why they would be pursuing Dylan Gabriel is because if they really thought Williams was going to leave. So with that announcement, because this is what I was worried about. If we started hearing rumors or reading reports of OU's pursuing and hosting Dylan Gabriel, he's on campus, that tells me that Caleb Williams would be leaving. But nothing ever came out. He was never. What's the reaction if they were going to bring on Dylan Gabriel? Of course,
2 weeks ago on this very show, I said the exact same thing you just said, and you guys both. Maybe it wasn't you. I don't know. It was. I remember watching back the video. It was either you or Hose, who were like, it has nothing to do with Caleb Williams. It's just Oklahoma recruiting. Because I had the same philosophy. Like, I don't like it because I'm worried that it means we don't want Caleb, or it means we know Caleb's leaving. And it was either you or Hose or maybe somebody in the comments who was like, it has nothing to do with Caleb Williams. It's all about this and this and this. And then now you're saying the exact same thing I was saying 2 weeks ago. It's just...
Well, we were bringing up Nick Evers. And Nick Evers, I don't know if you said anything about Nick Evers, but I think Dylan Gabriel was just the thought of, because we honestly, I had a gut feeling initially that Caleb Williams was going to be gone. And that's why I thought.
The same thing on our...
It was me.
Oh, okay.
It may have been Hose, yeah. But I promise you, like, whenever everything first broke, you guys both told me on this same show, we can go back on it. I think this is probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. Whenever like the whole news about TBOW first broke, my first thing was, and a couple of people in the comments agreed with me at least, because I said I think Caleb's gone. I think he's a Lincoln Riley guy, and you guys both said I was wrong. And then a couple of people in the comments said I was right. But I don't know. I feel like, Brum, you're saying exactly what I said weeks ago, but you called me crazy for it.
No, I don't think it's insane, but the longer it went on, the more it seemed like they were going to pursue Dylan Gabriel, and then all of a sudden they backed off. I don't know if with Jeff Lebby came in that relationship and it just cooled it, they started feeling comfortable, because like you said earlier with Dean Blevins, with Brent Venables saying that he would be shocked. I feel like Brent Venables is a pretty straight shooter. But with him at UCLA now anyway, I feel pretty good. But in the off chance Williams does leave, it doesn't mean that OU couldn't still go after Gabriel in early January. So
see, I'm not a huge Dylan Gabriel guy. I mentioned that a couple weeks ago on the show too. But now that he's at UCLA, I promise you, I hope he beats the hell out of TBOW. Now I became a huge Dylan Gabriel guy.
Yeah, he can sling that ball around. That's for sure.
Yeah. In the comments, I hope everybody who watches this video in the comments talks about the real fans who've seen all the videos will be like, yeah, Brandon's been saying this shit for weeks now. And
it was me. I don't think that Gabriel was going to be a replacement. And I know I've seen that multiple times outside of this show, our assumptions that Gabriel was going to be Caleb's replacement if Caleb decided to leave. I really never had a suspicion that Caleb was going to leave, but I'm also more cool-headed about this stuff until something happens. I don't really react. But I get it is what it is. I think Gabriel's he would have been a good quarterback at Oklahoma. He had good numbers with Lebby when they were both at UCF, and Lebby just produces good offenses. He hasn't proven otherwise at this point. So I think Gabriel did move over there because Oklahoma must have backed off of recruiting him. Not just because they probably feel really confident about Caleb sticking around, but we now have a guy to back up Caleb that we don't need to have multiple scholarship backups right now. We got to have Evers ready to come in if shit hits the fan, and hopefully, knock on wood, nothing happens to Caleb, but we need to have someone there to make sure they can run the offense if something bad were to happen. And after that, you just got to have, the guys you give opportunities to, walk-ons or guys that have been there for forever. Ralph Rucker, he's a guy that's been there for a little bit as a walk-on, I believe. So we'll just see who's going to be backing up in third and fourth string. But I mean, good for that guy. I do agree that him going there probably means Lebby backed off of his recruitment, but during his recruitment, I don't think it meant Caleb was for sure leaving.
Yeah. I mean, the worst case scenario would have been if they would have actively been recruiting him really hard and then he said no and chose UCLA. That would have been the worst case scenario. But it didn't seem like they were really recruiting him. But another guy that's in the portal is Casey Thompson. And I think if Williams ultimately does leave, I feel like they would go after Casey Thompson.
I think the person who has to be the most happy on the whole planet about Casey Thompson entering the transfer portal is his father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Casey Thompson being in the portal at this point is because he wasn't really Sark's guy. Sark got his guy in Quinn Ewers. And from, again, and we can touch on this a little later, but with how NIL is working, it seems like Texas just was the highest bidder in bringing him on the team. And him going to Texas from Quinn Ewers' standpoint as an individual makes complete sense. Sark has proven that he can coordinate good offenses when he's at Alabama. He's yet to do it at Texas. He had a few good games, but we'll see what they can put together. I mean, they've had multiple really good recruiting classes. They've just never been able to completely create a full team, and maybe they were just a Quinn Ewers away. But he could also be the next Tate Martell. Who knows?
Yeah, he could. I mean, you never know. You've been saying that.
Huge Tate Martell vibes. Huge Tate Martell. I mean, he's literally a spitting image of Tate Martell, in my opinion. He looks kind of like him with the blonde hair thing, although Tate Martell didn't have the flow, I guess. Ohio State, both committed to Ohio State originally. Neither of them played a lick at Ohio State. I feel like Texas will not be Quinn Ewers' final stop. Just a bold prediction.
Not be. Do you guys have anything else to add on for Casey? I mean, I wouldn't be very excited if he came to Oklahoma. I would just expect him to be another backup. He wasn't really great with Texas, and we kind of got our guy.
I mean, I guess at worst case scenario, he would definitely at least fill a spot and would bring some leadership at least. And I mean, yeah, if it had to happen, it would happen.
Yeah, honestly, I could see him going to Texas Tech. Their new offensive coordinator was, if I remember correctly, the QB coach for when Patrick Mahomes was there. So possibility for Casey there, but we'll see how his experience in the portal goes. Fun fact about the portal, I believe it was a week ago, and I'm not sure if I said it on the show, but there were almost 800 kids that were in the portal from the end of the regular season. Only shy of 200 of them had found a new home, and about 15-20 of them had removed their name from the portal. So I mean, the portal isn't always the answer for every kid, and sometimes it's going to put them in a worse position than they were before. And I think it's a calculated risk that these guys have to take, and some people don't really see it that way, and others don't see it as an option. So let's move on to our next topic, which was the kind of touching on NIL again and the transfer portal as a whole and how everything's affected. And a look back at the 2022 signing day. I think for Oklahoma specifically, it was a great day. You know, we went from going in shambles with Lincoln Riley leaving to being a top 10 recruiting class on the day of signing day.
USC is like 70 or something, 75.
Yeah. So USC has climbed up from like 102 to 70 to being somewhere in the mid 70s. So
they just squeaked out Tulane.
Yeah. So they're building their class still, but I mean overall the top 10 is pretty SEC heavy, and I think it's going to be a battle with Brent, you know, putting his classes together. I think he had a good showing this year, but moving forward, and it's something we'll probably talk about again in a coming video, but his relationship with Dabo moving forward cannot restrict him from recruiting fully for Oklahoma.
I think going back to that, I literally think it's only going to hinder it literally for this year, because at this point in time, maybe beyond, because I'm sure Clemson has 23 commits just as we did, that Brent won't mess with. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, off record, specifically talking about that Knack kid, that really good linebacker, who's out of Kansas that Brent Venables went on a recruiting trip with, who, it seems from all reports we've seen, he apparently wants to play at Oklahoma, and Brent's kind of, hesitant to, really recruit him, really push for it. But I really think that the whole him not wanting to step on Brent Venables, or not on Dabo Swinney's toes thing, is only going to be for this year, maybe a little bit next year, but I don't think so. We're looking too much into that. If you ask me, I think he's doing the right thing. I mean, if any of us work together for a very long period of time, we built a really close relationship, which all the three of us have. So Jose, you and I are on the same coaching staff, and you're the head coach. And I had an incredible opportunity, and I was going to leave. I would do the same thing Brent Venables is doing out of respect for you. That's all he's doing, and it's really only going to affect this class. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's I totally understand it. And it makes a lot of sense, and he's going about it a lot better than that the guy out west or whatever. But
no, say it. TBOW.
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, I understand not stepping on toes and whatnot, but you got to do what's right for the University of Oklahoma. But he's not going out of his way. He's doing it the right way. I don't know. It's tough to say. He's there for 10 years. I can't blame him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he should actively be recruiting guys that are committed to Clemson. He's doing the right thing there by not actively trying to poach them, but specifically putting Knack as the example. If that young guy wants to play for you and wants to play wherever you are, don't push back because he is verbally committed to Clemson. Is more committed to, it seems, to you and your defense than it was to the school at that point.
Exactly. And that's kind of what we talked about off show. I think Brumbot made a great point about that is before we started the show, is like, yeah, obviously Knack, for all intents, he seems like he's not a program guy. He's more of a Brent Venables guy. It just seems that way. He seems to really want to play with Oklahoma, with Brent Venables, because at the end of the day, the man has not signed his letter of intent with Clemson yet. And I think Brum, you mentioned it off before we started recording, like, you understand where Brent Venables is coming from, not wanting to, be a douche, I guess, to Dabo Swinney, not want to step on toes, kind of doing it the right way. I mean, he was at Clemson's graduation like 2 days ago. I saw a picture with him and a Clemson football player, and he's wearing a Clemson. He seems like an all-around really good guy. But I think, Brum, you said, like, I think Dabo would even understand at this point, like, hey, man, like, I understand you're not trying to poach our players, but this kid clearly wants to play for you. So, like, and that's where I'm going to agree with you, Hose, is just with Knack specifically, I think, yeah, he should be after him, because it seems like that's where he wants to be. And I think Dabo Swinney would understand.
He would. I really think he would. And I think it'll all end up working out and how it should. So,
yeah. Anyone want to overall reactions to signing today? I think, as much as I hate to say it, A&M just absolutely destroyed everyone, and Jimbo is really showing that he can recruit in the SEC. And I think, again, that's something Oklahoma has to look at.
Number one recruiting class far and away just to go 8-4.
That may be true, but at the end of the day, getting that kind of class puts a bigger emphasis on your coming classes moving forward. And if he can show success and those guys end up being successful and moving on to the NFL, they can go 11-1 for the rest of history and never win a playoff game, just like Lincoln did at Oklahoma. And kids are still going to follow him, and kids are still going to want to play there because they show success.
Yeah, their front seven, or the few defensive linemen between Brownlow, Dindy, obviously that one hurts, and then Walter Nolan and Anae White. I mean, that's just ridiculous to have it all in one class. And then you throw in Anthony Lucas as well. I mean, that would be that's one of the best recruiting classes, at least along the defensive line, that I've ever seen. And it's impressive. Whatever Jimbo is selling them, I don't know if they're dropping bags left and right. The kids are loving it. And, it seems like anywhere Jimbo goes, at least in his last two stops, they start playing pretty well. Another thing that I find interesting is Alabama. I don't know, I kind of watch from afar of a few schools and obviously Alabama, but for a long time, Alabama was ranked so low on, on 247 for months and months and months. And then all of a sudden they've had a run of just commit after commit after commit. And everyone's like, what's Nick Saban? What's the problem? What's the problem? And then here they are, they're sitting at number 2. I mean, it's crazy with what Saban and them have been able to do, and Kirby Smart.
No, and you're right. And it's either, you're 100% right with Alabama. And first of all, if you ever doubt Nick Saban, you're wrong. I mean, simply put, you're wrong. The guy knows what he's doing. He wins national titles all the time. If you ever doubt an Alabama team led by Nick Saban in any aspect, it's fool's gold, because you're going to lose that every time. But tying it back to Oklahoma, I feel like what pretty much the entire 2022 class tweeted today, specifically Kobe McKenzie, that guy put out like 5 or 6 tweets today with like the lock emoji and like, we're getting more, we're not done, we're just starting. I feel like our 22 class is going to grow, because I think all of the commits we have know something we don't. And I think Knack could be one of them that we talked off show, because it just makes a whole lot of sense. But Kobe McKenzie specifically tweeted like, there's more coming, we're not done. And I don't know, Hose mentioned it. Hose and I were together earlier. He mentioned Javante Barnes, which makes a lot of sense. But like beyond Javante Barnes and Kanak, who are we talking about here? Because it seems like from their Twitter feeds that it could be a decent amount of kids coming to Oklahoma.
Yeah, it must be, guys that Brent Venables and his staff that he's got hired. I know he doesn't have a few spots to open, but that they've quickly evaluated and offered and are targeting. It must be picking up steam pretty quick. And I do agree. I think OU, they're sitting right now with 15 commits, 14 sign, 1 just commit. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with another 4, 5, 6 guys to fill out the rest of this class, because there's definitely some areas of need, along the defensive line, offensive line. There's some definite needs, and I feel like they're going to fill out along the trenches like how we want them to, because
I
of
hope
the
Devon
losses.
Campbell's one of those guys that our 22 was tweeting about today, because that would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, and that leads us into the next one. I mean, to talk about another school is Texas. Texas is sitting with 27 guys in the class right now, which that's a humongous class to begin with. Obviously they had a terrible year. They ended up losing to Kansas. But I think this screams just the impact that NIL and the money that's around Austin, and not saying that Sark isn't, going to be able to, do a few things, and he's not a terrible coach, but
I'll say it. That's what's happening.
The money is crazy with, they've got like $10 million pledged in one pool for Texas athletes. And then they got $50,000 a year for offensive linemen, like 16 scholarship offensive linemen, or 8 or whatever it was. And they had a run in the last month of so many commits, so many flips, especially National Signing Day. They flipped Xavier Bryce from OU, which whatever. I mean, they flipped a corner from Ohio State. They flipped a defensive lineman or linebacker, I can't remember, from Michigan State, all on the same day. The impact on NIL is it's changing college football, and I feel like Texas A&M is also doing a good job of the NIL, and I think that's part of the reason why both those schools have recruited so well this past year.
Yeah, money talks, and going into the NIL stuff, starting the season, I thought it would be a good thing for the students, but now that it's really becoming an integral part of recruiting, I believe there needs to be some sort of boundary. NIL can't be a reason you should be recruiting, and maybe an old timey mindset, because Dabo has said it a few times now. He kind of hates it. He hates that it's just the highest bidder. Lane Kiffin has said this is pretty much just free agency at the college level at this point. Kids are mostly picking who's giving me more money, who's giving me more benefits outside of my education and developing at football. And I don't think that's true for everyone. And I know some people criticize Brum and I when we talked about Travis Hunter, the kid that chose Jackson State. I believe he made a choice because Deion Sanders is an all-time defensive back at every level he's ever played at, and he made what he felt was the best decision for him. And good for him, good for Jackson State. I think it's going to have an impact for them. But at the end of the day, NIL is putting some kids in a position to not succeed, and it's not going to bear for them in the long run. I think some of them are going to end up leaving. The transfer portal is, again, making it a free agency for these kids. And I bet 30% of the kids that signed on Wednesday or Thursday aren't going to be on that same team that they signed for come next offseason. They're going to be entering the transfer portal and finding a new home that's going to pay them more money, or giving them the opportunity that they just didn't think about going into college.
No, I agree. And at the end of the day, I can't necessarily blame the kids for trying to go take the money, because if you really think about it, the odds of, all these college football players making it in the NFL and making a good contract, it's like the 1%. It's the top of the top. There's only 256 slots in the NFL draft, and of those, probably 60% of them, 70% of them make the NFL roster after the first year. If you've got a team that's trying to throw $100,000 at you, even as a kind of a lower profile player, I wouldn't blame them for taking it. But you're right, it does put them in a spot where maybe they would go to another school, they'd have better development, they could maybe be better in the long run. But the money's for sure, and I can't blame them at the end of the day for taking the money.
With Travis Hunter specifically, like just this one kid, just one example. Obviously, a guy who's very, very talented. We've seen the clip that he made today where he made a ridiculous catch over a defender, scored a touchdown. Very athletic. He's going to play DB at Jackson State, though. I think the thing with him is, NIL or not, I think he chose to play for arguably the best defensive back in the history of football, because he thinks that's going to progress his career. And he's thinking more NFL, first round pick, NFL type guy, learn from the greatest defensive back ever, over winning college national championships. Because obviously he's not going to win that at Jackson State, and he knows that. There's no way he doesn't know that. And he chose to play for one of the greatest defensive backs, if not the greatest defensive back of all time.
No, that's the truth, and I hope it pans out for him. And it's going to be interesting to see. It's something that we've never really have seen before. It's uncharted territory, that's for sure.
Yeah, Brandon said it perfectly. He went to the place he feels is going to develop him the best, playing under arguably one of the best defensive backs ever played at any level. What's going to stink for Jackson State is, I think this put Deion Sanders in the sights of a lot of big time college programs. If any coach is on the hot seat next year, or if they're still on the hot seat now, watch out. Deion Sanders is going to come take your job. He's going to get paid a lot of money, and I would not be surprised if Travis is a package deal with Deion, because he picked Jackson State for Deion. And he has the chance to leave with how the transfer portal works now.
Oh, if Deion Sanders ever leaves Jackson State, there's no doubt he's gone too. Like that. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Do you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap it up today?
Just follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 2Plane Sports, and make sure to subscribe because only like 16% of you subscribe. So,
yep, you heard it here first. Like Brum said, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, you see them all right here under me. They've got the little logos with our name. Everything is at 2Plane Sports. I've got the links in the description to make it easy for all of you. Make sure you go click on them. Go follow us. If you don't like seeing our ugly mugs, just go click on the Spotify link. You can go download our podcast. Just hear us on while you're working out, on your way to work, on your way back home. Whatever floats your boat. Listen to us whenever you have some time on Spotify. If you don't like checking out the YouTube video, and make sure you leave a comment. Let us know what you think about recruiting overall this last week, Oklahoma specifically. And there's a lot of things that happened, and a lot of schools made a lot of big moves over the last week or so to really bolster their 2022 class and put their teams in a position to succeed, including Oklahoma and Brent Venables. Don't forget to like.
Is it time for if you finish the video challenge?
Yeah, don't forget to like, and Brandon's got a new challenge for all of you, for those of you who made it this far.
Finish the video. It's my favorite part of the show, reading the comments to see who finished it all the way through. So this week we'll go with Theo Weiss. We can do a hashtag if we want. Hashtag Theo Weiss, because we mentioned Theo Weiss on the show coming back, big news. If you finish the show, comment hashtag Theo Weiss. We love to see those comments. I promise you, everybody on the show loves to see it. We love the comment challenge. Hashtag Theo Weiss.
All right, let's do it. Hashtag Theo Weiss. Thank you guys all for watching. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.